everybody to the table. This is your man Cam. With me, as always, is
the nuclear scientist known as Joshenheimer,
as well as.
I guess I'm the anti-Ken, the anti-Barbie, the anti-happiness, apparently, because everybody loved that movie. Wow, it's the professor. Wow.
It's Black Panther for white girls. So
wow.
That's pretty much what it is. So,
Pink Panther.
And we are back, Blerdlines. So, before we start, me and D'Angelo want to give a big, heartfelt gratitude of thanks to our man Josh for watching Barbie all by himself.
He took that bullet.
You know, someone on the pod had to do it, and he stepped up in a big way.
He's the man, so he has the floor.
So, Josh, you can give us your one-man review of Barbie.
So it's a lot of it's everything that you think it is, and a lot of stuff that I don't think people realize that it would be. There's a lot of social commentary. There's a lot of gender swapping. It's D'Angelo and I were talking about how, we notice how many people use the word subversive when it comes to cinema and have no clue what the hell they're talking about. But this is subversive in a few ways. It's extremely self-aware. Like, it knows that it's a merchandising movie of sorts, and doesn't try to hide that. It knows that it's all the obvious things that are in the trailer, but it also plays on gender roles. It plays on a lot of social commentary, and just super self-aware is the best way to describe that movie. Will Ferrell, as always, when there's a surprise Will Ferrell appearance, that elevates any movie. He is the president of Mattel, which is hilarious. So just picture that in your mind, and any cameo, any random appearance by, and it's not a cameo, but any random appearance by Will Ferrell, like I said, automatically elevates. Ryan Gosling was hysterical. Like, he was really funny. Yeah, it was okay. On a scale of good to very good to excellent, it was okay. So but it also wasn't for me. I realized it wasn't for us. Like, it wasn't for men, for any of the men listening. It wasn't for us. I was telling D'Angelo earlier, if my daughter was younger, I'd probably take her to go see it. She never had a Barbie a day in her life, so she has no tether to the brand of Barbie. Excuse me. That's not true. Actually, as a collector's one that I never let her open, that's probably worth a ton of money. I need to go look at that. But yeah, no, she didn't have any real tether to it, but I think I would have taken her to see it. Because there's a lot of they have an interesting take on gender roles and the world of men versus the world of women. One of the things that ends up being funny, but ends up being a theme and a message in the film is Ken comes into the real world not realizing that that we're in a patriarchy, that men sort of run a lot of the world that we live in. Whereas in Barbie Land, all of the Barbies run everything. Issa Rae is the Black Barbie president. Just to give you an idea, like and Kens are literally the accessory. And so they don't have any identity. They don't have anything. They're there specifically to accessorize Barbie.
Message.
Right. And so when Ken realizes that this world operates differently, he carries many of the things that he discovers in this world back to that one. And so, it's
revolution.
Right. And so it flips the idea that Barbie Land is a female-dominated society and becomes a male-dominated society for the second half of the film, or second act of the film, I should say. And so, it plays with a lot of, with a lot of societal roles, and there's some themes in there. There are things in there that are very clearly for little girls and or women. I think it'll hit little girls one way. I think it'll hit women another way. And, I think it speaks to whether you had a Barbie or not. It speaks to a certain, it speaks to certain societal pillars that we sort of stand on. America Ferrera has this, this very lengthy dialogue about the expectations that are foisted on women, and how you gotta be thin but not too thin. You gotta be happy but not too happy. You gotta be a boss, but then you can't. You're expected to lead, but then you can't really. You can't lead to the point where you isolate yourself or alienate yourself from people. So it's all of the
things,
all of the double-edged swords get it. The double standards and double-edged swords that women in the world face get addressed.
Dope.
So yeah, that's the long and short of it. I don't think there's anything more to add. Margot Robbie is Margot Robbie. I
mean, like they did a good job of casting in terms of like the multitude of cameos and supporting cast and all that, and then the freaking marketing is insane. Probably one of the best marketing pushes I've seen for a movie in a very long time.
And they did a great job of, they did like a Lord and Miller, like they did the Lego Batman movie, and there's like every version of Batman in the movie. They did a version. Greta Gerwig did a version of that
for Barbie.
And so there's like one-offs that were like one-off Barbie was like video Barbie from the 80s, and she had like a TV in her back. There was Alan. I think there was an Alan doll at one point, and they only released it like one version of it, and that was Michael Cera, which was amazing. So there were bits that were just like, oh shit, like all right, I get it, I got it. He even goes on a little mini Scott Pilgrim tear in the movie.
Nice, it got to be meta. Got to be meta.
Gotta be meta.
I mean, it's doing well. They hit a billion. The marketing push is insane. Like everything that's around it. Everyone's hype about it. I'm like,
it does the job, and it's capitalistic in the spots that you think it's going to be capitalistic. That's something else that D'Angelo and I were talking about. It's a merchandising. It's smart enough. And the other way that it's subversive is it's a market for sure. It's built around a toy. So naturally there's going to be a branding, marketing, merchandising aspect to this thing, whether you want it to be or not. But they do a good job of not making it blatant and obvious and just, this is a movie for Barbie. Make sure you buy Barbie when you're done. Go to Toys R Us, or Toys R Us is closed. Go to Target and make sure you get your Barbie doll. Like it wasn't as blatant as that.
Yeah. Nah, that makes sense.
Probably the saving grace of the movie. I think because I think if they did that, you'd see. I think the movie going public would see through it and just
just shrug and keep it moving.
Yeah, just shrug it off and be like, whatever,
Yeah, that's dope. I mean, I think for the audience it intended it to be, it's doing really well, and I think and again, that goes to them, credit to their filmmakers, but also to the marketing team of like really hitting it out the park with this. So it was very, very, very interesting to see it. Someone asked me too, like, "Oh, you're gonna watch Barbie?" I'm like, probably not. It might not. It's not really for me.
No.
If I catch on HBO Max or something, if I feel like it, but I don't see myself like, and it's on, and Oppenheimer might be in the same boat for me, just because like the IMAX situation and trying to get to it and all that. Sold out and all
it's
that.
Sold out. Like I was talking with my boy about going to see Blue Beetle. That comes out, I think, the 18th. There's still IMAX showings booked for the 18th, past the 18th.
Yeah, I'm just like at this point. It might just be on my TV.
you might not be able to get to see Oppenheimer in 70 millimeter. It's still sold out.
Yep. So
and it dropped like 3 weeks ago at this point.
Yep, 100%. That's why I'm like, it's one of those things. But I'm actually glad, and I think it's gonna be interesting because in the mix of all the writer strike and all that stuff, and it is kind of something that's doing well. Same with Oppenheimer, two drastically different movies.
Sure.
But I think it kind of go a testament to both the directors and the people that made it, of like, for being two things that aren't tied to comic books, not tied to those. It's still like I said, Oppenheimer is a period piece and Barbie is literally a freaking toy, but it's kind of a testament to them to get out of that, out of our current sludge of the comic books that and superheroes that's been clogging up our airways for the last X amount of time.
Yeah, I think the one thing it did, if anything, if I can say one positive thing about Barbie existing, is that this last weekend or the last couple weekends has saw a resurgence in interest in movie going, and the numbers are proof of that.
100%.
And I think that not to knock the superhero genre, because it's been big business for the last 10 going on 15 more years, there is a staleness to it. And so seeing the fact that a movie like Barbie, Oppenheimer was probably always going to get a big audience because Nolan kind of has that footprint now.
Yep, he's an auteur.
Right. So, I think that's the fact that Barbie and Oppenheimer, two just radically different films.
Diametrically opposing is the phrase.
Right. Were able to, that's the best word for it, or best phrase for it. I mean, they were not only in lockstep on the marketing thing, and it became a thing that wasn't a thing that helped it benefited both films. It wasn't a rivalry or a competition, and as a result, box office won, and so I think that's the silver lining. My takeaway from Barbie's existence in the first place is the fact that now we see that there is a desire for, even if it's something as base and silly as Barbie, newness in blockbuster cinema. Something that
there's still a hunger for original ideas.
Yeah, I would say this and Mission Impossible kind of again the last for summer blockbusters. It helped bring that back, where back into respect that people want to go to the theater to see these things.
And shout out to Tom Cruise, who got the crappy end of the IMAX stick in all of this, because he really tried to fight to get Dead Reckoning in IMAX theaters for longer. And I believe either IMAX or AMC, it was IMAX. IMAX even fought on his behalf, like, yo, this was filmed in IMAX. It needs to stay in IMAX theaters for a little longer. Can't you split the time between Oppenheimer and Dead Reckoning? And they were like,
nah, son.
Right, so Dead Reckoning is gonna sell us. We're gonna keep Dead Reckoning in theaters well past the usual 1 week mark for summer blockbusters. And no, we can't.
I mean, it's
probably the right move.
It's the right move. I mean, with all due respect to Tom Cruise, and how I feel about him and all these and his hype, but
last action hero.
With all due respect to that, Oppenheimer should have gone in those theaters over Mission Impossible, because this is the 7th, 8th, 10th, who cares version of Mission Impossible. It's at this point, Oppenheimer is something fresh and new. That is something that I would just as soon rent on the video.
Well, from what I read, all the trades are saying that was a mistake.
I mean, I can see that from a money's perspective.
Oh,
but,
yeah. Totally from
I think there's not one trade magazine or paper or article that I've read that said that was a good decision, which is interesting. Because Oppenheimer is a way better movie. Having seen both, Oppenheimer is just a popcorn movie versus cinema. Cinema always should win out, and in that way, Oppenheimer, they did they made the right call artistically. I think with keeping Oppenheimer in theaters, it's still in theaters, and it's still sold out, and it's going to be sold out for the foreseeable future, as far as I can tell. But Dead Reckoning, was filmed. I mean, they were both filmed with IMAX cameras. One was filmed 70 millimeter IMAX, so that may trump. That's not something you have every day or every month or even every year. So I can see that getting trumped as the movie experience that more people should be allowed to see over an extended period of time. I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have.
But that Reckoning is going to
Reckoning in theaters, or I would have split it. But from a purely cinematic perspective, Oppenheimer is just it. I didn't even get to see it in 70 millimeter. I'm still trying to get a ticket.
Yeah, it's a better movie. So, for sure. All right, so now that we have the return of good movies and in terms of big blockbuster movies, I should say, good is a relative term. Now we turn to the small screen and the death of Marvel TV shows.
I don't know if it's a death, but it's definitely going into a deep sleep.
And what I'm referring to, referring to is Secret Invasion, aka Nick Fury and the Midlife Crisis.
I mean, the MCU in general is on sleep mode.
Yo, so we watched it reluctantly, and
no, don't say that. We didn't watch it reluctantly.
Hold on.
We were looking forward to it.
D'Angelo watched it reluctantly.
Yes.
Josh and I were looking forward to it. I need to cover all our bases here.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah, it was me. It wasn't them. It was me.
Yeah. So the first 3 episodes, maybe 4.
You didn't finish it?
No, I'm talking about what I liked.
Oh.
You know what? I liked the beginning. Like when I first watched it, it hooked me a little bit. I was curious. I wanted to see what they were gonna do. The thing I didn't like, I mean, just as I was watching it, was gone is our Nick Fury of what we know, right? We know Nick Fury is a badass spy dude that gets the job done. Now we're faced with old aging PTSD, kind of shaky, blah 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 Nick Fury, and how is he dealing with a certain threat? I think the misnomer for this show was they should not have called it Secret Invasion. They probably should have called. They could have called it anything else, and I think that would have tempered down the expectations of what it was supposed to be. And I think that, like, if they would have called it whatever Shield or whatever, or Nick Fury, whatever it would have been, but calling it Nick Fury, calling it Secret Invasion for the history of what that name is, it made it even more of a letdown while you're watching it.
Could have just been called Fury.
Yep,
and I would have accepted it as all the same.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
It wasn't that it was. So I didn't think that. I just kept asking myself, why? What is going on, and where are we going with this? Like for me, there wasn't anything that this was building to, and
there was no there.
There was no there, and there was nothing that was hooking me in terms of the stakes. I didn't feel like that the human race was under threat in this story. I didn't feel like there was an invasion that caught them by surprise and they didn't know, and now they were 2 steps behind. All those things were there, but they were there in a very one-dimensional and plotty way that, again, to me, it's just another layer peeled back of this new regime of the MCU, in which they're churning these things out without a second thought and not really building anything that is of interest. And so I didn't mind if Nick Fury was at that stage, but can he rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D. on the ground or something? Or, and is there something that he could we have not started at a place that helped us understand where Nick Fury was post the blip, instead of where they started and having to do a lot of that work with exposition, because that also is what killed this show.
Yeah, there was a lot of exposition.
There was a lot of explaining what was going on and not showing us any of these things. So
and I think that's the part that was like even worse, because I'm looking at this like, okay, there's this big threat. You can't bring in the big guns because of whatever reason. But so then you don't even bring in the little guns. Like you could have pulled Coulson, Quake, and freaking, Ming-Na Wen's character. I already forgot her name already. That's horrible. May. And that could have been the beginning. You're in shambles shield, but at least you got reliable people around you to help. Instead, it just felt like he was just kind of leaping from one thing to one thing to one thing. And at the same time, like you said, I was looking forward to it. I wanted to see how they were going to do it. I liked the scrolls aspect of it. It didn't feel like an invasion to me. It's just like they were just hanging out and just kind of chilling. Like there was no intimate threat. Even when they showed the part where they had the council and then, oh, this person's a prime minister, this person's a TV person, whatever. They just didn't do anything for you. They just showed that these people are doing it there, but they didn't say like why they were there, what they were doing, what machinations was going on. Props to the supporting cast. They did what they did. They did what they could with the script that they had.
Yeah, I mean, because what was Gravitas's really real problem with humans? I mean, it didn't seem like. I told you I'm not saying that name. It's so stupid. That's the worst villain name I've ever heard in my life. Gravik. That sounds like something you cough up. But Gravitas hated humanity because Nick Fury promised him a planet. And since when can Nick Fury give planets away? When has it been established on Earth that Earth is that much so powerful? I mean, they defeated Thanos, so now they can give planets away. Because,
what's funny is they said, what was it? It was one of the memes. They're like, Nick Fury and Captain Marvel were supposed to give them a planet, but they conveniently forgot the planet that they killed Thanos on. What? It's just like random plot. And then also the thing to me was I hated the Skrulls as refugees plot that was in Captain Marvel. And I didn't like it because the Skrulls had been, as established in the comics, was a warlike race. That's their whole thing. Now it'd be different if they established that in Captain Marvel as like, yo, we started a war and we lost. And instead it was like, oh, the Kree came and decimated us and da. And it's like, there's no tension from that aspect. Now, if a warrior like race is among us in Earth and they're out here fucking shit up, now we have some conflict. But in this one, I didn't feel the conflict at all through the whole show.
Yeah, because the theme would have been what we talk about quite often, which is two apex predators sharing the same domain. It's one is gonna eventually overtake the other, and so if they had played into that or built up to it, I hate that I'm saying this might be one of the few times where they should have went with 8 or 10 episodes instead of 6, because nothing was developed and nothing landed. Landed.
Yep. Even with Rhodey being a Skrull, that didn't land at all. It was just like, oh, Rhodey's being an asshole. Oh, he's a Skrull. All right.
So, I mean, I think I differ from both of you in that I don't feel like this ever got off the ground. I wanted it to, well, there's so many things that were wrong with this, but the first thing is just from a story standpoint, I don't think this ever really got moving. I don't feel like there was any escalation. I don't feel like I think you put it perfectly, Cam. There was no tension. There was no push pull. There was no tug of war. In so much as the threat was supposed to be that the Skrulls will take over the Earth. I didn't feel that at all. Like it was like they said it, and so therefore it is. There was no. At no point did you feel like that was actually a thing that could possibly happen. Yeah, I think it was too secret. The secret invasion.
Yeah,
you didn't really get a sense of. You didn't get a sense of the danger posed by a Skrull being the UN General Secretary or the Prime Minister of England or any of the people that were in the Skrull Council. It didn't matter. Like none of it. They didn't make any of those things matter.
Yep, exactly.
And what undercuts everything else that I just said even more is the fact that you have an addled Nick Fury. Yeah, Nick Fury is supposed to be. Now, personally, we could get into a discussion about the racial component of you finally give Nick Fury his own show, and here we have Sam Jackson, the ultimate older alpha male, and he's playing arguably the most alpha male in all of Marvel Comics with no powers.
Yep.
And then you give him his own show, and instead of him being the Nick Fury that we all know and love, the man with plans within plans within plans within plans and contingencies for everything,
and resourceful,
and hella resourceful,
which is his superpower.
When he is behind the 8 ball, it doesn't take long for him to get caught back up.
Yep.
And they didn't give you any of those things. Instead, he's behind the ball
the whole time.
All 6 episodes.
Yeah. They stripped him of his agency, and that's problematic when he is a black man. And on top of that, there were really tasteless race jokes in that, and pointing out, what other black man walking around Moscow? Fuck you. Maybe a few of them walking around. You know what's walking around Moscow. You don't know. So all of a sudden, it's there. I'll get it. It's astronomical. Maybe it's not, but I'm just saying they harked on that joke. Not just that time, but another time in which there's all these race jokes. Even Talos made a crack at his skin color, and I'm like, bro, you green. What are you talking about? You're not even human.
And then the whole subplot with his like wife-ish or something or other, like
that was weird.
It didn't land as like it wanted to. Like I was just kind of like, and they were trying to make it as Gravitas, as his name will now be called. Was like almost like a surrogate son sort of thing, and his son's mad at him, sorta, and like it just one of those things where like I see what they were down. Yeah,
there was no emotion, like Josh said, like we've all said, there was none in none of these things. None of these things had any kind of believability. Even the relationship between Talos and Emilia Clarke's character, Gaia, you did not believe that it did not feel like there was ever a connectivity there. And again, it's sad because you have great actors trying to give you all in this really bad script, and they're trying to do their best, but it's clear, even to you can just see it. It's clear that they're in their minds are like, this is just not working. This is just not
even Talos' wife being dead didn't land. Like that should not land. That should have been a thing.
And how they explain it? Oh, Gravitas killed her. Oh, when did Gravitas kill her? Who cares? We just told you he killed her. Oh, okay.
Gaia being,
I thought it was show don't tell, but
Gaia being on the other side with Gravik, and just like it didn't matter. None of it mattered. It didn't. Nothing that should have mattered as a plot point or an emotional pillar or a tether of some sort. None of it mattered. To D'Angelo's point, you have great actors making stuff work. I mean, the dialogue between the meetings between Fury and Rhodey, I mean, those were cool, but like those were the only moments that I can think of and I mean, you're supposed to have moments in shows like this.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are the only moments, the two bits of dialogue, the Pappy Van Winkle bit and that first conversation in the bar in London were the only times that I felt like, oh, yeah, all right, we getting some traction here. Mm-hmm. You get a little Sam Jackson, even when I'm in, I'm out. Even when I'm out, I'm in.
Right.
That was cool. That was dope. And I felt like, okay, so we're finally getting somewhere now.
But then show us that. If you're going to have him say that line, show us that.
Yes.
Because what we said is that even when you out, you was not even just out.
You're further out than you're a really good spy because you're further out than we thought you were.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you can't even get a plane ride, bro. Or a train ticket. What are you doing, Fury?
Yeah, it was. It was so bumbling.
And did the blip affect you that bad?
I thought about this the other day, Cam. We talked about when we saw Captain Marvel about how Coulson and Fury were just bumbling idiots the entire time through the film, and I feel like we got more of that now. Like, why? He's the former director of Shield, the director of Saber, which is just, I don't know why they didn't just stick with Sword, but whatever. But yeah, and you addle the man. You don't allow him to be the Nick Fury that's been alluded to, because we really never fully see him do Nick Fury stuff.
Exactly. And I was going to say that was my
fully saw Shield.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was my thing. Like if it would have been better if I got an episode of him after the blip. He got back. He's doing his Nick Fury thing, and while he's doing his Nick Fury thing, then he starts getting the shakes or whatever. And at least we see the I'm Nick Fury doing my badass shit. This is affecting me a little bit more than I thought. Let me figure out what I can do. Now I'm back in the thing. In the next episode, it's now we're X amount of years later, and you're right. He's lost a step, and he realized he's lost a step. So what do you do when you lose a step? You find people that can fill in the roles that you can do that, so you have a team around you.
He would build a network.
Yeah, he would have that because, like, there you go. That's Coulson. That's May. That's Quake. Because in the books, Secret Invasion, Nick Fury puts together the Secret Warriors that are people that he knows he can trust to help him with this thing called the Secret Invasion. And that's mixed with different types of characters. And that's like Maria Hill, Quake, a couple other ones. But it made sense because he couldn't trust S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore. So he makes his own secret team to fight this thing that he knows that they're actually all real people, that they're not Skrulls. And like that was something that they could have easily adapted into this on a smaller scale. Just having Coulson, Maria Hill, and Quake alone would have helped him at 4. Just have a team of 4. This is I know it's not S.H.I.E.L.D., but at least I got my people with me.
But that's my point. Like there was nothing built upon. Like you really expect at this point, and it makes sense that they would. That some of these shows are used to build. I've tried. I racked my brain to think about, okay, other than knowing that Kang is out there, what are we looking? Where are we going in these phases? Like, what is happening? Like, everything feels so random, and they cannot win it back by making one film and then try to retcon everything. That's not going to work this time because this was just like you said. You could have had the Secret Warriors, or you could have been building a ground new S.H.I.E.L.D. that was more clandestine, even more like, they're not going to be a big organization because they tried that and that failed, but they're going to be a mid-sized organization that can get shit done. Why weren't we building anything? That's in telling a coherent story. None of that happened.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem in general. Like I had to look it up, so I was curious about what actual Phase 4 was representative of. And Phase 4 essentially is Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, and Wakanda Forever. All those are mid-Marvel movies. All of them. Mm-hmm. And it's sad because, like you said, you can tell with the Phase 1, 2, and 3, they're building towards something. They had like 3-act structure, just like we talked about earlier. You said it before. Like, everyone has it, but I think what happened with Phase 4 was they lost their actual like North Star. And because Phase 4 initially back in the day, pre-COVID, pre-gun getting fired, was supposed to be centered around cosmic shit.
Right.
That's what James Gunn was like. Let's go to space. Let's introduce a bunch of space characters. I can pinch that in with my Guardians of the Galaxy. We launched everything else. Super fun.
Yeah, the plan.
That was the plan. And now once he got fired, that plan went out the window. Then COVID happened, and then they just did a whole bunch of independent pieces, which is fine if you just say, "Hey, these are going to be a bunch of independent pieces with no North Star." Yeah. You don't got to wrap it into somebody. But then they were like, "No, we're going to do multiverse. That sounds good."
Yeah, because they're in Phase 6 now? Phase 5 or 6?
Yeah, they're in Phase 5 now.
So, Cam, question for you. With your carnal knowledge of inside everything at Marvel, what is the sticking point with not reintroducing S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I actually don't know, because I was thinking about this before, because I thought at the very least, since they did quote unquote destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. and they introduced Sword in was that Wanda?
Yeah.
That could have, I think to me, it would have been better. It's supposed to have S.H.I.E.L.D. and Sword. Makes sense. Boom.
Sure.
But S.H.I.E.L.D.'s gone. So S.H.I.E.L.D.'s gone. It would have been, I would have liked even that. Nick Fury comes back. He's been working with Sword, but he's not on the same level as he was at before. He ran Shield. Now he's just an employee of Sword. And this would have been an excellent thing to introduce who? Abigail Brand. Abigail Brand is now the new Nick Fury. So
and Amelia Clark would have been a great Abigail Brand.
And there you go. So that now it gives more of a sense of Nick Fury getting taken down a peg. Hey Fury, cool that you ran Shield, but you're the one that got to let that shit get fucked up. So now you got demoted.
Now you're second man. You're second man down.
Exactly. And it would have been more fun for Nick Fury running up to Sword, like, yo, Skrulls are wilding. We need to do stuff. And everyone's like, nah, man, cool. You don't have that level of authority. And it's him going behind everyone's back to do this threat.
Doing Nick Fury stuff.
Exactly. And that would have been more fun because then you have, again, Abigail Brand, which could introduce mutants, which could introduce also the randomness. But that gives that opening where it's like, at every time in comics, there's always a Shield type of something that's around. You need a human-based organization that knows that all this shit is going on, and they're at some point cleaning up or figuring out how to stop it or figuring out how to police it. And
for the listeners, Abigail Brand, who we keep mentioning, is basically the Nick Fury of Saber, which is what Saber is in the MCU, is called Sword in the comic books. Same facility, same orbiting space station, except instead of Nick Fury running it like he does in the MCU, a character called Abigail Brand, who is part human, part alien. I forget what race. She runs it, and she's sort of the Nick Fury of that space station.
A space shit.
Yeah, but so they're sort of on par. They kind of always, whenever there's a joint venture, they're always sort of trying to elbow each other for dominance. Who's gonna be in charge, who has jurisdiction, who takes precedence, whatever. But it always, just that alone always creates a great tension in the books.
Yeah.
But, she's a mutant. So that's why Cam was saying she would be the one that she would be an easy linchpin to introduce mutants and X-Men and then sort of dovetail that way.
Yep. And it would be fun too because Nick Fury does need to get taken down a notch. If he was the top spy for so long, but under his watch, Skrulls happened, Thanos happened, all this other stuff. Nigga, you old. It's time for the new blood. And that was,
Hydra happened. I mean,
Hydra
happened.
It's like, yo, man, your resume is really bad. And so that would be to me, that would be way more fun and entertaining for the audience to be like, wait, there's a new Nick Fury type character that's a badass, doesn't have.
And she's a woman.
Yep, and she's a woman, and she doesn't have as many L's as he does. No. And she's sunning him at every point. Then now we have our thing because now Fury's trying to get his old luster back and trying to. It
also would be, especially if you building her. And using him being that who he is, it would be a great, one of those great sort of unwarranted mentorship relationships where despite how she might feel about him, she understands his value, and so that allows them to work together. Be sort of frenemies at times, rivals at other times, allies in certain corners. You know what I mean, like. But we didn't get any of that. We didn't get any hint of any inkling of that. We didn't even see Saber, Sword, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that was a problem too. Again, I know it wasn't about that, but what are they doing up there if they're not monitoring a potential alien invasion or figuring out or even aware that the Skrulls have taken up residence in an entire section of
Mother Russia.
Yeah, like you're telling me you have a whole organization that's been around for 5 years and not nobody knows that there's more than 1 million Skrulls chilling on Earth. Like what?
No satellites caught humanoids walking around living in a radioactive waste,
or ships coming to Earth and landing. Like what?
Right, exactly.
Like, you guys are worse organization than Jedi Council. What is going on?
And then you have and then you have the whole the president situation, which
was weird too.
Just a weird ending. Like now all of a sudden,
hold on now. I could totally see a really stupid president doing exactly what he did. I could totally see that. I think it's just there's a bunch of stupid in the show, and that just lands as more stupid. But
I can see it.
I could totally see a really dumb president. I could see Trump doing that.
Well,
okay, I see that's an argument. All right, yeah,
I can see that, especially if you're talking about like the reception of responding to the president representing the people and responding to the people. I can see that. You're right. I'm not saying that the device was stupid. I'm saying its placement was stupid and didn't really. On the one hand, you would think that something like that is escalation.
Yes,
it's escalation.
It went from 0 to 100 real quick
in 2 minutes.
It was literally like, oh man, I'm scared. I just got attacked. To wait, Rhodey, you're a scroll. Oh my god, I'm scared for my life. And then the next minute it was like, kill them all, and
I get it. It's an alien invasion. He was attacked. He's feeling vulnerable. All these things, but it just didn't feel like it fit into the larger world of what's happened in that world. You know what I mean? Like it's a response that's not in line with the world building. That's all.
And I would say too is like, even with the Super Skrull fight, like it was cool. Like it wasn't, not saying it wasn't cool, but it was just anticlimactic in the way where it's just like I didn't really feel one way or the other. Gravitas is there. Khaleesi's there. They're fighting. They're using different powers that we know, which is kind of cool. But it just didn't feel like this was like this epic thing that it kind of like the climax wasn't the climax. It was kind of just like it happened.
Let's back up for a second. It's not just that. It's what got us to the climax didn't really land either. Yeah. Like Super Skrulls are a big deal. Anytime Super Skrulls show. So Super Skrulls show up in comic books, something's up. Like it's a thing. Like when S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up, it's a thing. When S.W.O.R.D. shows up, it's a thing. Yeah. Super Skrulls show up, it's a thing.
And I didn't like that. The one thing about Super Skrull in the comics is it only the Super Skrull has 4 powers. Fantastic Four.
Yes.
Super simple, super easy. 4 powers, and there's only one of them.
No. Sorry. Back up. Originally, there was only one.
Yeah.
And then eventually in Secret Invasion, there wound up being a whole battalion of Super Skrulls.
Yeah. And I think that's what they were trying to pull from. But what made it worse was like, hey, now we have the DNA of every single MCU superhero ever. Just conveniently around. Oh my God.
That's a big deal.
Well, exactly. No. To be fair, they did say how it happened, and that did make sense.
Yes.
It's not about the how. It's about the placement. It's thrown in there. And that, again, we're talking about the Avengers here. We're talking about individuals who have godlike powers. Mm-hmm. And you're saying to me that isn't a bigger device that should be more, that should have been built up to better than just saying, oh, I got this vial sitting over here, this Avengers juice. 2 for $1. You
can't call it anything other than Avengers juice.
Like, what are you doing over here, man?
Yo, it's a nutcracker.
Why do you got the Avengers juice sitting up there?
But I think you're right, though, because like,
wait.
It's a nutcracker.
Why is it a nutcracker?
For the non-New York audiences, a nutcracker is a quarter water container with like alcohol and juice, and it's real lit. Just real lit. They're very expensive these days. They used to
they used to be $5.
Now they're like $15. Yeah, inflation is a motherfucker.
Fury carrying around boxes of Avenger Nutcracker in his spy car.
Yeah.
But any old Skrull to get his hands on and become as powerful as Captain Marvel or as strong as the Hulk. Like they hulked up, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. And it just, again, it was like that, and Gravitas talking about how like Fury would not have been nothing without his secret spies of Skrulls, which I thought was actually kind of a cool thing to add in there. Like, hey, it makes sense. If he had a bunch of operatives that could be anyone, of course you would get more information. Mm-hmm. But then it also diminishes the fact that Fury's a badass. And I was kind of like, doesn't make no sense.
Why would you use Skrulls to clean that up?
Right.
Like, anybody could clean that up.
Yep.
Right.
Damage control could have cleaned it up. You established damage control in the Spidey in no way not No Way Home. The first,
Homecoming.
Yeah. You establish damage control. That would be their job.
Yeah. 100%.
And they said that. And they said that. And they would be the ones that which Gravitas would have had to go through to get the Nutcracker juice.
Right.
To get the Avengers juice. So all of it was just it was just everywhere, which the way it should have been going, and that was the sad thing about it.
And I agree with that. And I think also it's like, I'm sitting there drawing from comic knowledge, but then mixing it in with story plotting knowledge, and then mixing it in with TV current MCU. And like, again, I'm going back to the same thing. If this was supposed to be such of a big deal, then throw a Skrull in Wanda, throw a Skrull in and Falcon and Winter Soldier, throw a Skrull in freaking Miss Marvel. Like, have something that's tied to all of them to make this a bigger deal.
And like, so in that way, once again, the comic book execution ends up being better because, and you could correct me if my memory is faulty, but they seeded Secret Invasion in the books 2 years out.
Yeah.
Conversations that people were having that didn't make a whit of sense, and you read it and you're like, well, I don't no idea what I'm reading or who they're talking to. And then they revisit that conversation from the other side, and you realize that person that had that random conversation is talking to a Skrull. Right. Or that person is a Skrull.
Right.
Or, somebody dies, and then, when Skrulls die, they revert back to their natural alien green form. And, oh, snap, Spider-Woman just died. Oh, it's not Spider-Man. It's not Jessica Drew. Not Jessica Drew.
Yeah, it's Jessica Drew.
Jessica Drew.
It's a Skrull.
And oh, snap, she just turned into a Skrull. Are there others?
And that was a good thing about Secret Invasion, because again, it was planned out.
Yeah,
they were like, and then as it started to unveil, you go back, and then like again, as a comic nerd person, you're like, nah, they could have not thought of this all the way back 2 years, and then you go back and read parts, and you're like, shit, they actually put certain aspects in, and if you're paying attention, people weren't acting exactly as they would normally act. So again, if I'm the show writers for this, and I'm trying to figure out, and again, I actually agree with you, D'Angelo, like, this is the one time I would say more episodes would have helped, because instead of having to do exposition for damn near everything, they could have showed it. Give me one freaking montage of Skrulls in the last, 4 Marvel shows, just around. I don't care if they're spying on somebody, but at the very least, give me some breath that's larger than just a couple spies running around.
They could have told that AI that made that dumb title sequence to do some kind of mural that is like literally all the MCU story timeline, and place Skrulls in
those
scenarios that we are familiar with.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. 100%. That's a motion graphic thing you could have done in the title sequence that made us start thinking like, oh, I guess they were been everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, the Avengers lining up, in their famous circle, and there's a Skrull over there. You know what I mean?
Or is there? It's a question mark. You don't know.
Exactly.
Right. But you're 100% correct. I think it was a missed opportunity to. The best thing about Secret Invasion, the book, was that you really didn't know who was going to be a Skrull and who wasn't. Mm-hmm. And when you did find out, you're like, oh shit! And they were good about the placement of it, because it wasn't like at first you're like, oh, I hope Captain America's not a Skrull. Oh, maybe Iron Man is, and you just didn't know. And then when everything kind of came out, it was pretty cool. But again, going back to our famous is Titans better than Young Justice? Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the cartoon, did the Secret Invasion better than Secret Invasion.
Wow.
And that's a cartoon. They had 22 minutes. It's like,
sometimes I used to always say it's not what's told, it's how you tell it. And that's what we have here. We could between the three of us and probably a million more. And I think if there's a strategy, because this filmmaker, as well as the one from Miss Marvel, said the same thing, which is they were told to ignore the comic books. Now, if that is the strategy going forward, and that this is the result, I don't know.
Bad strategy.
Bad strategy.
That's a bad strategy. You cannot alienate the base. You need the base.
Yep.
You need the base.
Famously, one of the few times that I remember Cam actually enjoying Captain Marvel was Secret Invasion.
Yep.
When she takes on a battalion of Super Skrulls, and basically, like they're like, all right, we're gonna, because part of it is it's a military operation for the Skrulls, and so they decide Manhattan has to get taken. And if I remember correctly, Captain Marvel's the only hero on Manhattan, on the island of Manhattan. And she takes on a battalion of Super Skrulls dolo and basically just smacks them all over Manhattan.
Which makes sense with her power set. And that actually adds, and again, it puts the character of Captain Marvel in a situation to show the level of power that she actually has.
And it's a great story.
And there's stakes, because if she doesn't prevail, you know what happens.
Right, yeah, the obvious stakes. Yeah.
And then, I mean, I'm trying to think of like...
But also, she could potentially be in danger. So you
right,
know...
Because it's not one Super Skrull, because she could flick a battalion, a broken nail at a Super Skrull and kill him.
Yep.
But a battalion of Super Skrulls is nothing to sneeze at.
And I think that's
the same thing that makes humanity dangerous. One of us is but you put us all, but you get all a billion, trillion of these motherfuckers, and you got some danger.
One human can be smart, but a whole bunch of them could be masses of dumbness. Mm-hmm. Men in Black. But yeah, I think that's the thing where it's like, you know, I think I have the same feeling that I had when I watched Ant-Man. Like, he should have lost for all the bumbling that he was doing all through this. Should have lost. Like the old Nick Fury, he would not have lost. This Nick Fury 100% should have lost. Because he was bumbling the whole thing, bumbling, half step, couldn't figure it out, you know, hobbling over here, like worried about his ex-wife-ish type person thingy or whatever. And I'm like, this is not, nope.
Let's just call that what it is. Nick Fury would never be he doesn't have attachments that you can use against him.
Right.
Yeah.
If anybody were to find out that Nick Fury in the comic books had a wife,
it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
And that she's a Skrull, no less.
Yeah.
He would never put himself. He would never put him and another person in that kind of danger.
Yeah. Yep.
Because they'd be used. You know, it is the Peter Parker secret identity thing, Superman secret identity thing. I keep my secret so that the people that are close to me aren't in danger. Nick Fury does the opposite. I got all my secrets and ain't nobody close to me.
Yep. Exactly.
Ain't nobody close to me.
He is the man on the wall.
Yes.
And I think that's the part, again, they just almost portrayed the character for, like, we've been rocking with him for 20 years. He finally gets his own joint and he sucks.
And this is what
Like, I mean, it just never, again, I never felt the threat of gravitas.
No.
I never thought that this
Shout out to the gravitas actor, though. He's been putting that work.
Yes.
That guy the last 3 years, Malcolm X.
Gotta say that.
He's about to do Bob Marley. Like, yo,
he's Barbie.
Yep. He's been putting in a lot of work.
Adair. That's
he's
his
been
name.
putting in work. Yeah. He's been putting in a lot of work. So that's props to him. I think.
Yeah. So if any good comes from this, it'll be that he got to level up.
Yeah. Agreed. And then
literally, that's the only good thing that came from it.
And I think I also want to see Khaleesi in a solid, like, TV show, something good. Like, I think she hasn't had anything like good yet. I think
there
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's been just a lot of mid, and I hope that she can find something that really actually plays to, like, because like, she's good. She can. Yeah. And the other good thing I would say, like, her action sequences in this were actually pretty cool. And
she was really good at that, especially having gone from a character like Daenerys, who doesn't, because of her regal position, and that world and women isn't really in a lot of physical combat.
Right.
She does a lot of standing and aggrandizing, but not a lot of physical battle. And so she really did look like a believable fighter, and I think that's especially for her size. I think that's a big win for her in terms of the future of what she might be cast in.
Yeah, definitely. And so the last thing I will say is the way they did my girl Maria Hill.
Oh, thank you. I was just about to bring that up. Like the worst death in all of the MCU, just pointless, meaningless, and she deserved better than that.
Way better. Better.
I believe the term used when a woman is used to the death of a woman is used to further a plot is fridging.
Yeah, she was whack.
I believe that is what they did with Maria Hill. I don't think I really fully got the concept of fridging until I sat there thinking, like, first episode, she's dead, she's dying, And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, nah, she a Skrull.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought, actually, honestly.
Like, she a Skrull. There's no way that you take out a Maria Hill for that reason, for that reason to further the plot. There's no way you do that.
Yep.
Well, but also Maria Hill would have been smart enough to not have instantly trusted Fury in the middle of all that.
Sure.
All things considered. All things considered, she would have not have just walked into that. I mean, this woman is a super spy. She was basically Fury's right hand for all that time. So while you can argue that he would be wearing his skin would be the way to get her to lower her guard in that moment, in that particular incident, no way. She would have at least put up some kind of or shot him or something like that, or where it wouldn't have wounded him.
Yeah. But also, why are you not wearing body armor in an active combat situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, she knows better than that. Come on.
Yeah. Man. It just again, it was just like Colby Smulders was in Jack Reacher 2. Yes. And she had a healthy amount of action sequences, and she did really good. I was like, yo, let's let her get that type of level of action in like a Maria Hill situation. She would be dope. And like, I'm almost sad that this isn't a freaking Fury and Maria Hill like vehicle for 6 episodes.
Honestly, it was an example of Phrygian, but it was also not, because it did not further anything. Only thing it did was it didn't. Only thing it did was gave Fury a reason to be angry. That's it.
Yep.
And to be more seriously now it's personal with gravitas. But other than that, it didn't further anything. And that's why I say it was a wasted death.
But what's unfortunate is there was never any escalation, because that's what I thought. I was like, okay, once I realized, okay, it's not a Skrull, it actually is Maria Hill. It's about to be on, because you just took out Fury's girl, like his number one. His
sense of urgency doesn't change. It
doesn't change anything.
No. Yeah. It changed nothing. The only thing it did was provided a reason. They just had a reason to write Colby Smulders out of it and Maria Hill out of the story. And that was again the most shameful. I thought this was the most obvious FU to the comics source that we've ever seen from MCU. Like, where it just like completely went totally away from everything that is known about any of these characters, any of this storytelling, all of it, except for the cosmetic and the surface level stuff.
Yeah.
This is the only time I've ever seen them that far away from the comics that it was almost like, this shouldn't be called Secret Invasion. It shouldn't be called Fury. It should just be called a Marvel Cinematic Universe television story.
Are we in season 4?
We can make out of that what we want.
Are we in season 4 of The Walking Dead?
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Season 4 of The Walking Dead. Oh, you mean in terms of MCU?
Yes.
No. We are more in season 6 of The Walking Dead.
Ooh.
Right? Because I think that's the good things. Remember, season 4 and season 5 of The Walking Dead are arguably the best, because they're not dealing with a whole lot of the highfalutin bullshit, convoluted storylines. It's all about survival and the thematic elements of that.
Right.
But when they get to season 6 and they're in Alexandria and you have
the Saviors, right?
Yeah, and then the Saviors, you got Rick doing some stupid like herding a bunch of walkers and getting people killed. So this is in that level where in that area where things are starting to just not make sense and being done. I mean, the MCU people should be hopefully that somebody plays this podcast episode and they understand that
I don't like how that feels.
They are on thin ice,
bro.
They are on thin ice.
I don't know how I feel about that assessment. I'm Marvel.
Yeah.
I know you are. And I know this hurts you. I don't take pride or pleasure in hurting you, my friend.
I know you don't.
But this is what it is. They are on thin ice, and they are about to fall right into that black abyss of the creek if they don't right this ship.
I cringed internally when I verbally made the comparison because The Walking Dead is just way off the reservation by the time.
That show's still on?
Well, that was the feeling then. It's gone now, but that was the feeling in season 6. And then what? They went on for another 5 seasons after that and topped off at 11. So again, and it wasn't a good 5 seasons. So but they chugged on. I don't know if I don't think the MCU is in dire straits in that regard yet, but I'm saying they are resting on their laurels. They are taking advantage of the fact that that the audience has put trust in the ability to tell good stories, make entertaining movies, and make us desire to either tune into a TV series weekly or go and pay $20 for a movie ticket. That is diminishing very, very fast. And this last effort, Secret Invasion, on top of Ant-Man 3, Thor Love and Thunder, you got midway with Doctor Strange. I think it was terrible, but at the same time, I can buy the argument that it was okay. But you add all those things together, and you got a real bad pattern of they are not paying attention to the right things. And I don't know how much more of this I'm going to continue to watch. You know, some of it I'll pick and choose, but I'm definitely like, I didn't watch Werewolf by Night for this reason. And they might have been good, and I probably missed out on something, but
I mean, it makes sense. I didn't watch Moon Knight or She-Hulk or Werewolf by Night.
Didn't watch She-Hulk. Didn't watch Miss Marvel. Although I might circle back to that.
I watched Miss Marvel. That was cool.
Said that was good, so I might circle back to that.
But you're right. I think they've lost their goodwill now at the point where before it was must-see TV. Now we're at a point where you're picking and choosing, or you abandoned it altogether.
Or you're worried. Everything about Secret Invasion that I thought might be the worst part is some of the stuff that came to pass. Like I thought Secret Invasion felt like too big of a storyline to tell the way they got planned to tell.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I always thought that. And then when I found out it was 6 episodes, I was like, oh, this is either going to be extremely good or the opposite. And it was the opposite.
And this was a podcast where we officially found out that we will never work for a Marvel studio.
We found that out. That was me a long time ago. I never had a shot.
Well, and it's
you guys had a shot. I didn't have a shot.
And what's interesting is, so Secret Invasion is supposed to start the phase 5, right?
Yes.
The next one is supposed to be the Marvels.
Yeah.
I will reluctantly see this, as we all know, my well-placed hatred of Captain Marvel, the character, but my girl, Monica Rambeau's in it.
Yeah, I was gonna say Teyonah Parris is in that. So
and Nia DaCosta is directing. So I
enjoy Candyman. Candyman was a really great film. She did an excellent job with that.
So with that with the side, that's the next one.
Let's pause for a moment and drink in the fact that D'Angelo actually thought a film was great. You don't hear that very often.
In the last 2 years?
Well,
you don't hear that critique very often.
Now,
I don't give it out that often.
Exactly.
And then watch
and speaking of things that he actually liked, they cloned Tyrone.
Oh yes, I did like that.
So as we'll wrap it with they cloned Tyrone conversation, because D'Angelo and I have both seen it. Josh hasn't. He'll see it later and come back with his thoughts. But they cloned Tyrone on Netflix with Jamie Foxx, Teyonah Parris, and John Boyega. I really liked it. It was entertaining. It was fun. They did some subversion in the good way.
Yes.
of Black stereotypical tropes. And they did it in a way that made sense within the story.
Mm-hmm.
They also did a good job of adding in the sci-fi element, so it's not too heady and not too over the top, but just in a way that if I don't watch sci-fi movies, but I like Black people shit, I can watch this and enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of those rare films like that where it's literally, I think it strives to be a Black film in a time where there aren't any real Black films in which, when I say that, I mean it's Black people or I would say a segment of our community, many communities, being themselves in their environment, irregardless of not assessing themselves. You know what I mean? They're not psychoanalyzing themselves until that point in the movie comes, and there's a reason for it. It's tied to the science fiction leitmotif or plot line. That's the genre that they're operating, the mode that they're operating in. But otherwise, it's a really just funny, well casted movie. I mean, Jamie Foxx's dialogue was probably only Jamie Foxx could have delivered on that level and been that funny in that role and not make you like, because I mean, how many times have we seen pimp roles? And that was the whole point, right? It's he's supposed to be the pimp, the drug dealer, the hooker, you're supposed to, and so that was where the subverting comes in as the plot unpacks itself and unfolds. And I don't want to spoil anything. I think everybody should watch this movie. It's a rare thing that I like Netflix films. That's another thing. I mean, I don't really like a lot of the
and it felt like it didn't feel like a Netflix film. I think that's another reason why it was good, because it felt like a good film, and it was a black sci-fi, but it emphasis on the blackness. And they really try to make sure that this is a black film and it's in the sci-fi genre. And here's how we and then they'll do. They take some of the tropes and they flip it and all that. The casting was great. John Boyega does a great job. And Jamie Foxx, same as well. He's having a time of his life the whole time. He's
he really was. He really was. And may I say that John Boyega proves my point that Brits can do American accents just fine. But the other way around, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it does not work.
I don't know why that is.
Yep.
I don't know if it has something to do with the access and the training or the whatever, but they nail American accents like no other. I remember the one with Emilia Clarke where she does the California Valley Girl accent, but you do the opposite, no way. So John Boyega was proving my point.
It's a hollow list to how they talk that is very different. The only reason I can do it even halfway is because I have family from England. Otherwise,
but you know what, Josh? That's better than Joey King and Bullet Train.
Brian Tyree.
Brian Tyree. Brian Tyree, because I always forget his last name.
Henry.
Henry. Yeah, that's what it is. Brian Tyree Henry, yeah, exactly. Way better than his American, his British accent.
If I didn't have him from the land, I was about to say the land down under, from over the pond, across the pond.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That and Benny Hill reruns.
Yeah, that'll do
Benny
it.
Hill reruns as a kid had me talking in somebody's British accent.
Yeah. But no, it was a good film. I think John Boyega is definitely putting that Star Wars crap behind him, and he's really
choosing his spots really well, man.
Yeah, and he's showing that he wanted to be a part of that, but he was never planning to be labeled as the Star Wars guy or the Star Wars actor that was in it. But you could tell he wanted to be a part of that, and he was disappointed when he realized that, they really are racist and they really don't want to see or if the fans huff dust enough, they'll push aside the black character and, whatever into a menial role. But this was something that I think was good for him to continue to build on. It's a rarity that he has a role where he's not saying that much, where he's not the person that's delivering a lot of dialogue. And so that's kind of an interesting thing that the filmmakers, I thought, played up well as you get to the climax of the film and the big reveal. And so there's only one thing I didn't agree with it, and it was had to do with the big reveal and the sinister plot behind the whole story. I'm talking vaguely because I don't want to unpack it and spoil it because then you go down a whole rabbit hole. But let's just say that in a film that was largely about unpacking that idea of being trapped. I think about Dave Chappelle's joke from Killing Them Softly, where he's like, I went back to my high school recently and they had me to speak there. And he said, and I went back there and I told him, I said, I looked them kids straight in their eyes and I said, you want to be successful, you got to get serious. You gotta stop blaming white people for all your problems. And you gotta rap or sell drugs or play basketball. You is trapped. And so they clone Tyrone. You takes that small thing and builds they build a whole story around that idea of being trapped in
the trap.
Exactly, in the trap, in those spaces. And that is where the sci-fi was brilliant, the science fiction was brilliant, because it took that and it made it feel almost viscerally real, almost too real. In a way that the Matrix unnerves you in that idea. You know what I mean? That thought process. So yes, They Clone Tyrone definitely knocks it out the park in terms of a really good Black film, a strong comedy that's just fun to watch. I think, if you're just looking for something to just kick back and watch, it's very, there's not a lot of scientific jargon.
Yeah, and I think that's the part. That's the part I would say. Like it strives to be a Black film first and a science fiction film second.
Right,
and make sure that they really make sure it's blackety black. And then they're like, but there's some sci-fi shit in it. And I like that they play around with that, with the characters in it on some like, wait, you need some lab coat, walking around motherfuckers. Da, 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 da. And like, I like how they play with that. And it's like, as the science fiction starts to come out, you're like, wait a minute. And then the characters within it are like, wait a minute.
Right. Exactly. I think the funniest scene for me was the church scene. Oh, and David Allen Greer being the preacher. And so that made me laugh because it was clearly a homage to his role in Martin as the preacher.
100%.
And the way they shot it and the way he was doing was the exact thing. And that was a great cameo. He was only in that scene. And I was like, see, I would love to do a film where David Allen Greer could just come through and do his thing and be like, you know what, I'm out. And it was such a great scene, and he killed it. And that was like kind of the thing from beginning to end. Like everybody was involved, everybody felt like they were authentically in the space, in the environment. It was a good film. It was simple, but exactly what you want in a three act film. And
and it was 90 minutes, people. There's a thing where you could make a movie in 90 minutes and it's okay.
Yeah. I have to make 3-hour epics every time.
But even Barbie was 2 hours.
Yeah. So I would say and then Tiana Paris, she did a great job too, because like she was cool because again, they had the three characters and each one brought what they brought into it. And I like that like her character helped calm the other two down, or actually be the logic part, right? Where Boyega was more I'm gonna kick the door in and shoot somebody. The pimp is more like, do I really need to be doing this? I got money to make. Yeah. and then she was more like, whoa, these books I read, Nancy Drew, normally she looks around and she figures out some shit.
Yeah. And so, the idiosyncratic dialogue is what really, it was, like, again, in today's society, John Boyega's character Fontaine saying when he asks Yo-Yo is her name, he goes, so he finally gives in, he's like, so what is it? So what did he say though? So
he's like, so what would Nancy Drew do right now?
But he doesn't say that. He said, well, so what would the bitch do right now? And
yeah,
so,
he says like, what would the detective bitch do right now?
What would the detective bitch do? The bitch and then she's like, huh? And he's like, this from your book. And so again, we laughing not at the obvious whatever misogynist speech, but just the fact that phrasing, but just the fact that the writing of it and execution acknowledge a space in which that would not be uncommon to be said.
Sure,
and so it's not trying to censor the environment. It's allowing these people, these human beings, who yes, they say these things, but that didn't mean that he was, feels that way about women.
Just in his way, that is how he refers to. Yeah.
And they're showing that, and that's the cinematic aspect of it. That's what I'm saying. That's what makes
there is a segment of society. You say there's a segment of society that absolutely does speak in those colloquial terms.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think that's the dialogue was done really well, and the performances as well, because they made it again. It felt lived in. And so it wasn't a parody of Black people and how they talk, yo, nigga, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
They actually had conversations of like, if someone did something
authentic.
Yep.
Yeah. And references to the things that Black people do. Like one of the scenes that made me laugh was when they're going back down in the elevator and John Boyega is framed with John Boyega standing in the middle, and then you got Teyonah Parris to his left and Jamie Foxx to the right. And I don't know which one started it, but one of them broke out singing "I'm Going Down."
That is absolutely something.
Start harmonizing and singing "I'm Going Down," and then the other one joined in, and the whole time Boyega, who's supposed to be like this tough drug dealer that never smiles, never laughs, it's just like. It just has like this scowl on his face, but you can't help but just laugh because it's like, how many times,
how many takes did that take?
How many takes did that take? And how many of us can relate to that? Where like you're doing something and then one of your friends will break out a song based on something that you're doing. And
And in that way is always the tough guy, straight man. And
I think that's what was awesome because it made it relatable to Black culture type stuff.
Yes.
Whether you're from the trap or not. And
right.
They made sure that they dropped in little nuggets of Black culture that wherever you're from in the United States, and you're in Black culture, you have some type of a connection to those little things. So that to me felt like in a lived, authentic way. They had some interesting cameos. The plot reveal and all that stuff was also pretty well done.
Yeah.
And so it's like, again, it's a good example of an original story, telling it well, like you said, and getting to a good conclusion where you get to the end, it's satisfying. You smile. You're like, yeah, I like that.
And they also, from the business side, franchise and branding side, they left it open to do more things potentially with those same actors and whatever. And, again, hopefully, I don't know what his recent health issue was, but hopefully Jamie Foxx gets well and that they will be able to do a few more because they made a good team. They were great
team. And I think I watched the Jamie Foxx's other Netflix joint, Day Shift or whatever, the vampire one.
Oh, that's the one I wanted.
And again, it's one of those ones where this one to me feels way more Netflixy, if you want to put it that way. High concept, shot pretty cheaply, entertaining. And like there's the lore of it and the kind of overall thing was like kind of interesting. Great supporting cast with Snoop. Snoop did a good job. But again, it was just like, here's the concept. There was a good world building of how they did it, and it was executed pretty solidly, and it ends. And I was like, if nothing else, I think Netflix is starting to bring in that B-level quality of movies where they're entertaining. They're not on some like this not a franchise. It could be if they want to, but it's tell a good story first. Let's entertain you, and then you can move on with your life. And so I think like that, if they can kind of stay in that pocket for certain set of movies, then they'll have something, I think, in terms of a consistent thing. Where it's like, because Jamie Foxx, the other show, was it Power or something?
Oh yeah, the superhero one.
Yeah, and that was same thing. Project Power. Yeah, horrible name, but solid story. Got in, got you out. Decent performances. And then again, I think if they can keep in that realm, where if they're gonna greenlight projects that are in this level of stuff, cool. Then it's the dumb shit where they get that they throw in like they they just throw money at Ryan Reynolds or The Rock and be like, "Yo, man, what are you doing right now? We got an extra 150 million just like laying around. You want to just
or the director that shall not be named? They throw him money too.
Exactly.
So, scale of 1 to 10, this for me.
For they clone Tyrone,
I'm gonna give it a solid 8.
I will give it an 8.5.
Whoa.
I took a 5. I was going to give it a 9, but I took a whole half point off and I could discuss this would spoil, so I would discuss this with you off air, or next time after you see it.
Yep.
But
I know.
I think 8.5 out of 10 is fair, and I think it actually is way higher than I've ever ranked anything from that.
Yes. Hence my eyeballs popping out of my head.
Yeah, man. It's dope. And I like it because again, black director, black writers, black cast, like they did a good job. Like I think we need more of this, and I hope people really go see it and really embrace that, because I think they did a good job. And to the point where like I almost wish if it could have been in the theaters in a different climate of right now. I don't know when they would release it, like summer blockbuster, maybe like a spring or like a fall.
February.
I would think like a fall or spring release would do it well, but it could also do fair well in the holiday season, because that's usually around the time where a lot of films that's like black focused films generally
like
are released
around
well. Exactly.
Yeah,
like even The Best Man Holiday surprised me when it came out, and it was like this was like a 15-year sequel, and it made like a whole lot of money.
Yeah. But I hope if nothing else, this gives other studios a little like eyebrow raise of just like, original concept, black director, black writers, put a little money in the jar. Put a little money in the jar, because we need more of these types of things. We need more original stories, and we need more black creators being able to get backing. I know I have a couple friends that know the writers from it, and they said it was like a 6-7 year journey to get this made.
Wow.
And so,
that doesn't surprise me. I mean, there a lot of the best stuff have those kinds of lineages where it starts off here, and then 5, 6 to 10 years later, the golden egg has been laid.
Yeah, so interesting. But man, what's you guys' final words? Because we're ending on a happy note. That's what Barbie in the early, then we sandwiched it in with the little secret invasion, and then we end on some positive, uplifting black people stuff.
That is called producing, ladies.
A block, B block, C block.
I guess I'll go first. I'm just stunned that D'Angelo gave an 8.5, because his 8.5 is my 9.5 probably. So yeah, I'm probably gonna watch it as soon as we're done.
Nice.
It's a good listen. It's a good film to. It's a good final word, and it's a good film to kick back, like I said, and just check it, because it goes by. It's not like you're not like. I told you the test of a good film is when you don't have to look at your watch, or you're not looking at your watch, or the time, checking the time.
Truth.
But I think my final word, I'm just gonna go a different route. I recently finished the video game Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and that was fun. I mean, that game, there's a mode. And this wasn't on the first one, but it's on it. There's a mode where that dude. Oh, it's after. Remember, I told you the Vader thing, Josh.
Yeah.
So it's after that where he finds his master or whatever, and that boy goes full dark Jedi. They let you. They tell you. They like, yo, press these buttons and unleash Cal's dark side. Boom.
So it's a choice, or you have to do it.
For the first time you have to do it, but you don't have to do it. Like you could, but it's the sequence is set up so that you do it. Because he's like, after he goes into that mode, like doors like bolted shut, horsepower, just like pulling the doors open, like chasing down this dude. I was like, yo, they got some sequences in that game that's just like, they're mind blowing. Like they just put you in a whole nother space of gaming. But that's my final word. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and the storytelling is much better than anything the sequel movies did. And I'll look forward to hopefully seeing Cal Kestis in a live action show. Somebody pointed out recently that there was a cameo by his droid in The Mandalorian. BD1 was in that one woman shop when he went to go try to get a new droid or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting because that would be. Here we go with time and stuff. It's like trying to like hold sand in your hand.
It doesn't line up.
It just won't track.
It never lines up. It never lines up.
That's supposed to be set years after the video games, right? Because the video games are set literally at the height of the Empire before any of the original trilogy. And so. And The Mandalorian is set after
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi. So at that point, Cal Kestis would be more of a grizzled. He would be much older than he is in the game. So it would be interesting to see if they do try to bring his character in, or if he survived. I think they're waiting till they do the third game, and then if the third game is like a hit, then they'll probably keep him alive and put him in the live action because he's a good character.
Yeah, they should just give his own TV show.
There's also slides in the idea of us ever working on Star Wars. We should talk Marvel. We should talk Star Wars. So basically, just no Disney. Got it. Okay.
A24 all day, son.
See, I can live with that, Josh. I don't know how you feel about that. You might have to use a pen name. That's
for real. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, use a handle, you'll be fine.
Pen name.
Yeah, that's all.
I don't know if I want to exclude myself from either of those, but
yeah. So I would say mine is. So I've been catching up on my comic book reading of lately. Took a long break from the world of X, because it was all over the place, and just recently in their recent Hellfire Gala book, they threw a curveball into all the stuff they've been doing for the last 3-4 years, and in a good way and a bad way. I think it kind of gives me the same type of feeling that I felt on some parts of it for Secret Invasion. Essentially, for those not in the know of the X of recently, X-Men have their own country. It's called Krakoa. Mutants can come and go as they please. Blah 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 blah. The last 4 years of tranquility, they've been doing some crazy shit. Awesome, kind of awesome. Definitely new than anything you've ever seen for any X nerds. Anyways, Hellfire Gala is this big ass show that they do. Everyone dresses up. They have comic fashion designers design different looks for all the comic characters in it, and they've done it for 4 years. It's actually a pretty dope concept. Smart in terms of marketing. Anyways, at these ones, they always pick a new X-Men team. So every 12 issues, you have one team, and another 12 issues of a different team, which I think also is kind of cool. Uses the breadth of all the characters they have in X and mutants and all that kind of stuff, flips up a little bit thing. It leads to interesting stories. Anyways, they pick the team. It's like Juggernaut and Jubilee, Dazzler, I think a couple other characters no one knows. Iceman, Prodigy, Frenzy, and Cannonball. And usually you have the hero shot, right? The full page, everything. Hey, these are your new X-Men. Woohoo! And then all of a sudden, Nimrod, which is the kind of like the most OP Sentinel, crashes right in the middle of it and kills like half of them. And it was funny because two things were funny.
It's funny. I'm sorry that Nimrod, because I've heard of the Sentinel Nimrod, and every time I hear the name, it just makes me laugh because the idea of his having that name, and being that powerful is just hilarious. I love the irony.
It harkens back to ancient times Nimrod, not Nimrod. You're an idiot.
No. I know that too, but I'm saying you get both. I know that it's going back to that. I'm just saying that I like the idea of thinking about both in that regard.
Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, it's kind of funny either way. And so anyway, so he kills half of them. Another thing too in X-Men that's been happening, another trope that they've done, which is we don't got to get into it, but they figured out a way to resurrect each X-Men in a proper way. Before, the running joke is X-Men never dies. You know, Jean Grey's dead; she'll come back 10 years from now. Colossus dies; he'll come back in 3 years. But this one,
right, and they lean all the way into it.
Yeah, so this time they lean it into it. They have a whole process of how to resurrect people after they die. So these last 4 years, different X-Men have been getting killed in these missions, and then they come back, which is kind of interesting. Anyways, they stop that process from happening. So when this happens, they kill Dazzler, Jubilee, 2 black characters that are kind of minor, and Cannonball. And then luckily X-23 and Sync, or 2 other characters, are off the screen. Juggernaut doesn't get killed because it's Juggernaut. And then that starts a whole like big set piece. So in this set piece, they kill off Iceman, quote unquote, and they kill off Jean Grey, quote unquote. And as I was reading it, I was sitting there and it was like, I've been reading X-Men since, I don't know, I was 6. And I was thinking, does anything shock me anymore from a comic book standpoint? And I think in this regard, it was a little bit of a shock, but it also wasn't that much of a shock where, you know, you just killed a bunch of D-level characters. Kill someone on the A list that we know is going to come back. That's probably going to give
an
you
A-lister.
Yeah, but even his is just like
she is an A-lister,
but she's always dying. So again, going back to the real stakes of stuff that we always talk about. You know, D'Angelo says it's like I like what they did is because X were riding high on the last 4 years of kind of positivity and all this rather randomness. Mm-hmm. They do another thing where they get rid of another chunk of mutants, and then so now we're left to like I think like 20 or 25. So at the very least in terms of stakes and consequences, we've kind of got them back to being on the run and kind of where they're actually interesting. And so I think that part is good. We have I'm curious to see how it all plays out. And I think now I'm almost more interested to see how they're gonna do it. Because I think one of the big things for X-Men is they always have really big ideas, but the execution is always lackluster. And so I think that's the thing. We're curious to see how they land this plane, but at least they've gotten out of the little bit of the rut that they were in this past year with a lot of these X-Men stories.
So I have 2 questions now. A, how does Nimrod gain access to Krakoa? Yep. 1. And then 2, isn't Cannonball an external and therefore immortal?
That was 20 years ago. We don't talk about that now.
Oh.
Wait, did you say external? Do you mean external?
Eternal.
Or is external a real
external? I thought it was external.
He's the same one as like Gideon and Selena. Yeah.
I mean, that was like a legit question because I thought it was like it was a mistake. I didn't know if it was real.
Yeah, it's external. Yeah, he's an external.
They're external. There's a group of mutants that are
immortality,
for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And Cannonball is supposed to be one of those.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to address that over the next books. I'm curious to see. But yeah, and it's just interesting because I wish I'm almost like what would have made me like be more invested. Like killing quote unquote Iceman and Jean Grey, okay, yeah. But killing a bunch of B-listers in the way they did, which is like gross and it's like splat and all kind of thing. And then Nimrod goes to town against Juggernaut and whoops his ass, which makes it kind of cooler. Like, all right.
Let me ask you something. In terms of, because that's kind of a thing with like all comic books. So like where characters come back in different arcs and everything. So what becomes the emotional investment when you know that some of these things ultimately don't matter?
It depends on the character. Like, say, for instance, Jean Grey is a great example. Jean Grey, they killed her off as usual. She died. But when they did this past time, she was gone for a solid 10 years.
Okay.
Like, and to the point where I almost forgot that they had killed her off. Because, and what they did to Marvel's credit is they allowed the writers to use Cyclops, the character who was very linked with Jean Grey for all that they did, to actually grow as a character. He started dating with White Queen.
Emma Frost.
Emma Frost. He started to be more of a Magneto and less of a Professor X. Like they really started to like. So now the consequence of her dying was Cyclops was off the rails doing some random shit, and that was kind of dope. But then I think when they do then there's other ones where like when it happens, you're just kind of like, all right, we all know like like they kill off Wolverine. You know he's coming back in the year.
Yeah,
And a
he's
half.
going for like
we'll,
2 years.
we'll see you later. We'll be
Exactly.
in 3 years.
and which is
How long was he going for?
I think they did about 2 years, something like that. And to their credit, when they made X-23, Laura Wolverine, those stories were awesome because she is not Logan at all. And they made that painfully clear, which made it better because now she's a different type of Wolverine, which is awesome. And that's the point. You want these characters to grow. And I think a lot of the legacy characters get stuck in their tropes, and they don't allow them interesting stories to kind of take. And so that's part of the reason why I can't read Peter Parker Spider-Man anymore, because there's so many other spiders that they're doing more interesting stuff with, and they're still making Parker the bum on the couch with the hot ass girlfriend. Like what?
But that's part and parcel due to the fandom too.
Yeah, that's also part of the fandom, 100%. Not allowing your favorite characters to grow into something different. So I think, and so I was pleasantly surprised with this iteration of X-Men these past 5 years, because it had been a mess for almost 10, maybe more. And then they had a good 2-year run of cleaning up all that mess. So I'm really curious to see where they go with it. But you're right. I think when you know all these characters are going to just like come back or some to the aspect of it, that's part of the reason why a lot of people really liked Invincible, the comic, because the whole book is about consequences. In issue 2, he throws the scientists into space. Issue 7, you see the scientists' bones still orbiting the Earth, and so
because he would have burned up.
Yeah,
velocity he would have to achieve.
Yeah,
into high orbit, right?
He would die quick though. He would die quick.
But this is all wildly interesting because Cam had to twist my arm behind my back to get me to read the current iteration of X-Men, and I kicking and screaming because I was like, yo, it was good where it was. They were just fixing it. And he was like, nah, bro, I'm telling you, you gotta Hickman did a reboot, and I was like, reboot? Why? Just calm down, bro. You gotta I'm telling you, it's a process, and I think you gotta kind of trust the process where he's going. And sure enough, it took a million years to get there, but when it got there, and it's been good. The little bit that I have read since that reboot, it's been pretty. First of all, it's an incredibly intellectual reboot, incredibly intellectual, and that's not something I've been able to say about X-Men since I was probably a teenager. But yeah, man, I trust it. I trust the whole process, because if they're doing that, that means that they're angling towards where things were going with Powers of X.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's why I think it's having a plan, having a North Star, and going towards that North Star, and giving
chunks of the end before you get to before you even get there. You have no idea how they get to the 100-year, 1,000-year arc that they lay out for X-Men, but this is the beginning of that.
And so I would say the last thing I'll say, I already went too long, but so the whole thing was, to give you a really brief, is essentially one of the characters mutant power is they can reset a timeline, and so when they die, they reset the timeline, and then they remember everything from the previous one.
Yes.
And so that's kind of cool. That was the kind of the trope. That's basically how it starts, which is something interesting, something new I haven't seen before. But anyways, in leading up to this whole thing I just told you about, Sinister, with his machination that he always does, he's the one that helped design the system to bring mutants back. And so by doing that, he experiments on himself all the time, makes clones of himself, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, he's made 3 clones now that are actually really, really powerful and completely different from them. And so he actually puts that power of resetting the timeline to himself. And so he knows that because he's been part of the whole X-Men Mutant Council. Everyone knows he's going to betray him at some point. And so they're all just waiting for it to happen. So this is the moment. So he basically goes in, kills Professor X, tries to kill somebody else, and then they kill him. So then the timeline resets. He's like, shit, that didn't work. So, all right, how am I going to do this? All right, I'm not going to kill Professor X. I'm going to kill this person and this person. Boom, gets caught again. Damn it. All right, let me figure this out. So he does this every single time up to the 6th one, and he figures it out. He injects his personality and his genes into the cloning process. So he kills 4 of the X-Men, Professor X, Exodus, Hope, and Emma Frost. But when they get reborn, they're born with Sinister genes. And so now that makes them even more eviler because Sinister is an asshole. That's what it is. So he takes their personalities, adds in the Sinister assholeness, and they go on a tear, basically becoming supervillains at this point. And so he doesn't get killed, but now he's happy because he's like, haha, I got you. They fast forward 10 years. Now they've taken over the whole planet. And Sinister is actually now neutered now because they don't need him anymore. So now he's pissed because he's like, I got everything I want, and this is not the way I wanted. Then they go 100 years later, and they kind of go from that thing. So it's really interesting. But again, it was another small concept idea, and then I thought it was done pretty well. The only thing I would say was a little bit too short. But anyways, it was something I'd never seen before, had consequences, and it was actually pretty interesting, satisfying ending. And I think one of the cool things it ends with is it ends basically 1,000 years in the future. Sinister finally figures out a way to find his machine so he can reset the whole timeline because he wants to get back to what he's trying to do. And before he gets to do that, someone shows him his actual future in other multiverses because Sinister's whole thing is he wants to be God. He wants to be a beyonder type level of a character. And the person basically shows him, hey, man, all your machinations, you're never going to get there. And here's your future. And here's all the other ones that everyone else that tried. So everything you're doing is pointless. And that's when Sinister kind of starts almost crying because he realizes he lost. He's like, it's not me. It's going to be my clones. It's going to give you guys problems, but you guys are locking me up. But again, it was one of those things. Nice concepts, some consequences, and introduce some interesting characters. I'm like, this is what next X-Men needed: bold ideas, bold stories, and again, just telling good stories with all these characters. You have literally 1,000 characters you can play any story with. I think that's you can kind of do. So, but yeah, I'm interested to see how they come out. You know, I'm gonna figure out a comic book review type situation pod at some point. We'll get there. It's inspirations for the future. But once again, thanks for everybody rocking with us. It's Blerdlines, and we are out.
Yeah.